Okay, so I've just started the recording. Welcome everyone to this session, which is all about how to engage your candidates in a remote recruitment process. Um, what I've put together is a set of 10 psychology rooted tips in how to make sure that candidates are more likely to stick at it until the end. So it's going to retain them through the process, but also it's going to engage them and help them to be more um, likely to accept an offer from you and perhaps position you better versus your competition. I'm going to be sharing some slides shortly, and I'm happy to send those around afterwards as well. If you have any questions at all, then in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you've got a little speech bubble, and you can click on that and pop questions in as we go. I'll also have a little bit of interaction, but as it's only a half-hour session, there won't be a huge amount of time for that. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Here we go. So long distance admirers, psychology-based tips for making a remote recruitment process more engaging. So just as a quick, by way of introduction, then my name is Ben Williams. I'm a chartered occupational psychologist. I've founded a company called STEN 10 11 years ago, and we specialize in the design of bespoke assessment processes, whether those are psychometrics or whether those are behavioral assessments like assessment centers. And I guess like many other providers in this space, we went through a bit of a sea change in how we go about running our assessment processes due to COVID. And why did I decide to put this presentation together? Well, it was really spurred by a survey conducted by the Institute of Student Employers that took a bit of a backwards look on how employers have found the move to online assessment and assessing at a distance. And one of the most persistent things that came through that was one of the drawbacks was trying to give candidates a feel for what it's like to work here, the culture, trying to entice them to join and to stay. There were so many benefits. So it was quicker, it was cheaper, possibly even had some diversity and equal opportunity benefits as well. But this engagement thing was a particularly tough nut to crack. So I created this presentation in response to that. One of the examples that a couple of our clients gave were around the assessment centre days and how in the past they could give people a really nice insight into the company. We worked with a company called Softcat, who had a lovely office, and it was all as you might expect, kind of pre-pandemic. It was all football tables and really nice open plan areas. But they said we just can't convey that to people when it's being done remotely. Similarly, I presented with the company Rentokil at the ISE conference, and they said, well, look, in the pre-pandemic days, we used to, at our assessment centres, wheel around a trolley full of essentially sweets, but sweets in the shape of the kind of pests that their company specialises in exterminating. So it was jellied cockroaches and candied spiders. So it was, they felt that, look, that shows we're a bit fun and it helps people to understand our culture a little bit better. So it's how can we do that? When I was putting together this presentation, one of the things that came through as I was writing the rules to make these assessments more engaging is that there was actually a lot in common between building a good romantic relationship as there is to building a good remote assessment process. So I've kind of hinged this whole presentation around how tips from like your love life essentially can be put into this recruitment process context. Now, I should flag at this stage that I have not personally been on the dating scene for 22 years. So some of these tips, I can't vouch for their success in the world of romance, but at least it's evidence-based for the world of assessment. So what makes for a great relationship? What I think I'd ask you to do on the call is perhaps to use the chat. For those that have just joined, then the chat button is over on the far right hand side down the bottom, the little text box. So you can click on there and you can put your ideas in here. But what I'd like you to do is to brainstorm what makes for a great relationship. And we're talking romantic relationship here. This particular slide will probably only be understood by those of a certain age, but this was from a program called Blind Date, where I learned all of my tips on how to impress someone romantically. Essentially, it was usually kind of have a poor dress sense and make some rather stretched, saucy puns and jokes. But yes, enough reminiscing about my love life. Let's get it on. Sorry, let's get on with it. So I'll have a little look in the chat and just see some of the ideas that you've popped down there. But what kind of things for you make a great romantic relationship? So I can see some key themes are coming through there: trust, communication, and attraction. Clarity of communication, which is one of the things that we'll be talking about in a moment. Shared values and goals, openness, kindness. That's nice. I think that's probably an extra tip. I haven't talked about kindness, but I think that does have an application here as well. Respecting people. So both in romantic settings, but also in a recruitment process, showing respect for the amount of effort and time they put in, I think is really important. Okay, so let's dive into some of these pieces of advice. So relationship advice number one, it's important to have fun with your partner. So one of the things that we've seen a lot of our clients doing is introducing gamified elements to the recruitment process. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean get them to play a game, like a game-based assessment, although it could, but give them a sense that they are progressing through the process and do so in a fun way. So whether that's having progress bars on display, whether it's badges for achieving certain parts of the process, unlocking rewards, or even some companies have leaderboards where more of the, I guess, frivolous aspects of the assessment day, for example, something they could be doing in between the group exercise and the role play exercise, can actually be kept track of in public so people can see their performance versus others. What the psychological theory this is based around, I guess there's a few here, but one of them is self-determination theory. So they feel as they progress through that they have more perceived control over the process and therefore feel more engaged. Also, having a bit of a context in which they're performing, so via a leaderboard or via a way of playing a fun game with other people that are at a centre, puts a bit of a social context in place for the assessment. A couple of examples I'd give here. This particular image is drawn from the French Postal Service, and I guess they walk people through a day in the life of working within their organisation. And after the introduction of gamification to the end-to-end process, they saw a reduction in dropout rates from 29% to 8% of people. So it really helped to keep people sticking with the process to the end of this funnel. Something that we've been involved in at Sten 10 is a bit of work with a large oil and gas company where we, pre-pandemic, we'd designed an escape room where they got to learn about the company, but also to act as a team, to unlock clues, and to complete an iPad, to crack codes and move on to the next stage. Now, we've managed to transition that into an online realm, into an online world, so it can still stay. So people get a real feel for what it's like to work at this company, as well as having a bit of fun into the bargain. So the first one, have fun with your partner. Relationship advice number 2, and this relates to, I think, a few of the points that were raised in the chat. So this is about telling your partner what you'd like them to do. Now, what I mean by that is providing clear and concise instructions in order to reduce the cognitive load of your applicants as they're applying, which will not only increase engagement levels, but it will reduce frustration with the process. This is based upon cognitive load theory by Sweller et al. In 2011. And also, I think along with it being improving engagement, I think the clearer someone is about what they have to do and the task they're about to face, the less likely you're going to get outside influences that could harm their performance unintentionally. What I'm thinking of here in particular is stereotype threat. So that's a theory that goes back to 1997 from Steele et al. And this is where you feel if you don't understand what to do, and perhaps you've heard about an organization not being particularly representative of the group to which you belong, whether that's gender, whether that's age, whether that's ethnicity, then these interfering thoughts will start intruding, and it can impair performance. Because people will say, well, I'm not going to fit here, I'm not going to do well here. There's a really interesting study which you can perhaps Google afterwards that was done with the Avon and Somerset Constabulary, where they had a situational judgment test where they saw quite big group differences in not only completion of the SJT, but performance levels in the SJT. So what they did was they changed the invitation instructions. So the invitation instructions were really clear about what to do, but also helping them, encouraging them to get into a certain mindset. So saying, actually, you're going to be representing your community. This is a chance for you to experience a day in the life. And what they saw is getting people into the right mindset before they sat this SJT not only eliminated group differences, and these were ethnic group differences in the application stage, so who chose to complete the SJT, but it also eliminated group differences in performance on the SJT. So that was quite something for me, because I thought, well, I could understand how it could affect dropout rates perhaps, but to see the power that stereotype threat can have upon someone's performance in the actual test on the score you get was really, really quite powerful to me. So yeah. Yeah, I do get Anna's point there. So Anna says having a leaderboard or adding a contest would not disadvantage people who might be less competitive and or increase the performance anxiety of some. Yeah, I think that is a fair challenge. I think the main place where I've seen that done have been where actually it's usually formed part of the competency that they're actually looking for. So it might be kind of achievement orientation, but it's kind of set up as a separate task for them to do in their downtime rather than something that's formally assessed. I do get your point though, that if that's not part of the role, then actually setting people up to compete with one another could have unintended consequences. So I do see that. Okay, number 3, I've labeled this down as watching a movie together. So this relates to the psychological theory known as dual coding theory, and basically giving people information via multiple modes of information can help to enhance people's learning and their memory, and also help increase their reported levels of engagement. So this is where I'd be saying, well, look, think about how you can blend that into your remote recruitment process. What I have here that I believe I can show you, I'm not sure if this will show the sound as well, but let's just try this. So hopefully everyone can see this tab now. It's a recruitment process from Unlocked, who recruit prison officers. And obviously the move to doing these assessments online meant that it was quite difficult to give people a realistic job preview about what life in a prison is going to be like. And indeed, they did have a number of candidates who would get through the whole process and still not realize that they would actually be working in a prison at the end of it. So what we did was that we worked with them not just to have a more kind of staid, old-fashioned situational judgment test, but to have a video-based one. So here's an example scenario.
You are locking up cells at night time. when one prisoner tells you he needs to borrow a book from another prisoner. You have to make sure everyone is locked up in the next 2 minutes, and the other prisoner's cell is 5 or 6 doors down the corridor. He is pleading with you, saying it won't take him long and that he has to have the book. What would you do?
Okay. It'd be quite interesting actually, just to let me know if you heard the audio on that, but you could see there was the written content of the scenario there, and it's replicated here, so it appeals to, I guess, multiple preferences. And then it's multiple choice. It's your similar setting to any other SJT, and we had a whole host of those designed quite carefully to give people a preview of not only the good aspects of the role, but also some of the challenging aspects of the role that that in the past they said had led to people leaving the program or yeah, being surprised by the program. Okay, I'll just pop back onto the slides. Okay, sorry, I'm just finding those. There we go. Okay, so that's multi kind of modal presentation. Relationship advice number 4, and I'd say that some of these tips were tips that that are, I guess, tried and tested, and some of them are based upon things that are perhaps less common, but I thought, well, they could perhaps provide food for thought for people. So one is give to your partner in order to receive. And this is based upon one of the fundamental laws of social psychology called the reciprocity principle. So we almost feel like we want to pay back what we receive from others. So if we do people a favor, we feel likely to feel we want to pay them back. It's quite common in marketing where you might give someone a free sample and then expect them to go on and buy the full one. So I would encourage you to think about what can you give to your recruits as part of the process. At its most fundamental level, then it could be free information, which could help them to learn more about the company and the role in an engaging way. You could think about what gifts you might want to present to people. So we had one client who is responsible for essentially Meals on Wheels. So food that's delivered to people that can't leave the home, kind of due to old age or disability. And as part of one of their assessment processes, they actually sent people a meal to prepare in advance. And they could do that live on the camera. And it was a way for people to get to know each other in a kind of online environment. Now, for some people, that might be a little bit kind of cringe, but it was a way of trying to get that human connection when that was no longer possible as a result of the pandemic. This was actually done in a development context rather than a recruitment context, so everyone did know each other. But I guess thinking about those gifts could be a good thing. And the other thing is thinking, well, what could you give them maybe in terms of a new skill? So another a large high street bank integrated telling people about the GROW model of coaching as part of their pre-reading. So they got to learn all about a new skill, and then they were encouraged to practice it at the assessment day. It was one of the tasks. So it was a really nice thing to give people, because even if they weren't successful at the assessment centre, they went away with a new skill. So the feedback from participants was really positive about it, even when they were rejected. Number 5, I guess ask and be asked lots of questions. So this relates to something called the social exchange theory, but people are more likely to engage in positive social interactions when there's a mutual exchange of information and resources. So this one's pretty straightforward. Hopefully you're doing it anyway, but let them ask lots of questions throughout the process, whether that's at the very early psychometric stages or whether it's more towards the assessment day. Let them feel listened to, heard. Number 6 is get personal. There's a winning point from that guy there. So like the advice earlier about gamifying the process, which led people to feel like they're achieving things, they're moving through the process, they're ticking things off. Making things more personal can increase levels of engagement and autonomy due to feeling more actively involved in the process. So what do I mean here? I mean, I think where possible, personalizing the material, so using their name and rather than just a blank invitation, perhaps even writing it custom according to that individual rather than just sending out a blank, you have got through to the next stage, please pick a date from the below. Something a bit more personal, like we really enjoyed meeting you, loved hearing about XYZ, and yeah, really looking forward to seeing you on the next stage. Allowing them to say what appeals to them about the role and to find out more about that in particular. So sometimes companies say, well, look, go to our website, read a little bit about all of the good work that we're doing, but perhaps giving people the chance to speak to current employees or blending it into your interview when they say, why do I want to work here? Have a little section at the end where perhaps you say, would it be helpful to you if I told you a little bit about why I joined, but linking it to that person's particular aspirations, whether that's career progression, whether that's international mobility, etc. And if possible, maybe let them choose their path through the process. I know that's not always possible, but let's say if someone's got a personality questionnaire and 3 ability tests to sit, perhaps let them choose the order in which they sit them rather than say, right, it's yeah, numerical first and then whatever it might be. So give them that feeling of autonomy. Number 7, I don't know if this advice really relates to the real world of romantic relationships, but it can do in the world of assessment. So asking former and current other partners to vouch for you, to say that you're a good sort. One of the things that we did at STEN 10 was when we were recruiting last year is I actually just put a call out to people that had worked for us over the last 5 years and said, would you be prepared to say a little bit about what it's like to work for us? Here's actually a little video. I'll play that now, but this is what we put together to attract people. Okay. I'm stopping it there just because the last one is a video. Actually, it looked quite guilty. It looked like I was about to not show the last testimonial from someone, but no, just in the interest of time. But that's asking other people to vouch for you could be really good. And this is where at the ABP conference when I presented this, it actually spurred people to say, well, actually, I'm doing some exit interviews next week, and I think I'm going to ask them just to give us a little testimonial as part of that to see. Presuming you're leaving on good terms. Okay. Talk about the benefits. Why should that person join your company? So this is where you can start highlighting your culture, your environment, the working hours. I think our company specializes in bespoke assessments, so you could say I'm biased, but I think this is really where they come into their own, because you can blend that into the assessment day, you can blend it into the online situational judgment test, you can talk about some of the work that they can get involved in, some of your environmental credentials, some of the success stories from past people that have worked there. So really entice them to join in the design of your assessment process as well. Number 9, I think let them know what they're doing right and also wrong. So actually giving people feedback rather than leaving it right until the end is a nice way to keep that dialogue going, and playing back some of those things people said on the chat, giving them respect. So they've finished their battery of psychometric reasoning tests. Just telling them they've got through to the next stage is possibly less effective than actually giving them a little summary of their performance, maybe giving them some tips about how to do better, or how to capitalize upon their strengths. And then the final one, I have to confess that this final tip I fed into ChatGPT, and I said, give me some tips for making a remote recruitment process more interesting. And this one, it came up with try it outdoors, which I thought was a bit of a silly one at first, but when I thought about it, I thought actually it does relate to some of the work we've done previously. So this is something called attention restoration theory, which talks about having brief and intermittent breaks from a task to get outside and engage with nature can really improve cognitive performance and engagement. So I was thinking about how we've done that in the past, and with a supermarket chain, we actually built into part of the remote assessment to go to your local supermarket, evaluate the produce layout, and prepare a presentation on it as part of the assessment day. So where that's appropriate for your business area, see if you can blend in some real world interaction as well as part of the process. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. And I'll just, I guess, open things up for any questions in the last couple of minutes. Either pop it in the chat or come off camera. If you need to jump, then I have included towards the top of the chat my LinkedIn profile, if you'd like to fire any questions there, and my email address. But any questions or experiences anyone would like to share from today? No, I don't think so. Okay, well, hopefully that was interesting, spurred a little bit of thought around things that you could be doing a little bit differently than you're doing currently. And I'd really welcome any feedback or subsequent questions you have on the process. Have a lovely afternoon and take full advantage of the sunny weather we've got. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.